Hi everyone, hope you're all well. Welcome back to my Ireland-inspired Pokemon region balladry. Today I want to do something a little different and begin introducing my gym leaders. I only have 4 to show you this time, but since I'm generally much more comfortable designing human characters, I'm excited to showcase the leaders I've done so far, as well as a couple of new Pokemon of course. So I, like many others, would absolutely love to have a genuine challenge in any order system for the gym leaders. Not like the half-hearted attempt they made in Scarlet and Violet, but actually a proper structure where their teams progress in power depending on how many badges you already have. I've seen people do this in their ROM hacks, so I don't really think it should be as big of an ask for the Pokemon games to implement it as it seems to be. I'm saying this because I'm not presenting these gym leaders as the first 4, they're just 4 of them. I also really like the idea that they have a wider pool of Pokemon to pull from that would be randomized in each battle, so you're never really sure what to prepare for. First up we have Barney. I also want to do away with typing specialities and instead want to focus on each gym leader representing a specific facet or theme of Irish culture. Not that they would represent these things in the context of the Pokemon world, but they're just nods to what I think are pretty important features of Irish culture and society. So, in Barney's case, he's supposed to represent pop and social culture, with more of an emphasis on the community and camaraderie aspect. His gym would be set in a large pub that he owns, and the general vibe would be of this vibrant old man who's beloved by his town. And even though his battling heydays are long gone, he's too popular for them to want to replace him. I can imagine that as you battle him, he'd have all of the townsfolk rallying behind him and cheering, but still being lively and supportive as you gain the upper hand. Everyone's just there to have a good time, and it doesn't really matter if Barney loses, because either way, it's been a show. And then in the end, he buys a round for everyone anyway. Pubs have for a very long time played a really integral role socially in Ireland. So if we just forget for a moment the drunken Irish stereotype, pubs are often still the core of a community, providing an atmosphere of warmth and welcome to everyone. You can meet people, share stories, enjoy traditional music, and overall just enjoy a sense of conviviality. There's a reason they've spread so widely worldwide. Everyone can and should feel welcome in the, as I said, camaraderie of a pub. Barney's name comes from barley, which is apparently the typical grain used as the base for Irish stouts. He gives you the Kindred badge upon winning, which is supposed to look like 2 people greeting each other or embracing. Up next is the leader who embodies Ireland's occult attributes, or the attunement to the spiritual and the supernatural. She's inspired by the Cailleach, or the witch, the most famous example being the Hag of Bera, who's associated with the coming of winter. The word comes from the Old Irish Cailleach, which means veiled one, so I thought all of those together would make sense as this slightly neurotic and leery woman, all wrapped up in a kind of loose interpretation of a veil. Her scarf smothering her face to either kind of hide her or just because she's cold, as a reference to how a lot of supernatural encounters describe the air as turning frigid. She's constantly fidgeting with the rings on her fingers and her nails are all bitten and ragged. I decided on the name Sheila just as a simple way of conveying the magical part that she represents, obviously coming from she and Shirvra, both meaning fairy or spirit. Her team would be a mixture of fairy types and dark, psychic, ghost, maybe some rock Pokemon and 1 or 2 ice types thrown in. I imagine her gym being in the north of the region, which would be the now nearly obligatory snowy area. It'd be cold and isolated, a place where she can be alone and not have to interact with people apart from when they come to her for a gym battle, which would take place outside. Sheila gives you the Uncanny badge, which I designed to look like an obscured face or one that's hiding its true self. Her team could have Cryogonal, Bronchi, Snagpie, Sheenotic, because fairy rings, Dupuka, and our first new addition to the Pokédex today. I really wanted to make a changeling Pokemon, as they're a very common creature in European folklore. They're mostly known for swapping their own fairy children with human babies, which will then usually grow to be aggressive and exhibit abilities and intelligence that would go beyond their age. Apparently they were often used as an explanation for the disappearances of infants during times when they most likely died due to malnutrition or illness. So here we have Fury, the needy Pokemon, dark and fairy type. Fury like to hop into the cots of infants in the hopes that their parents will also look after them. If they're chased away, however, they'll take any chance to steal the family's belongings or eat all their food in retaliation. It has happened that wild Fury will attach themselves to couples who don't even have a child, accompanying them wherever they go and acting in what seems to be their interpretation of a human child's behaviour. Its name is a mashup of fear, fairy and eerie. Fury's evolution is more based on the idea that Irish changelings also value attention in a kind of a twisted way. People would avoid praising or admiring babies so as not to attract a changeling's attention to it, and even beautiful adults could be the target of their gaze. Anyone who is admired or envied too much could potentially then be in danger of a changeling's power. So Fury evolves into Disgaze, the observant Pokemon, dark and fairy. This Pokemon watches through the hollow head of the baby it carries, which it will attempt to swap with a human infant that has caught its attention. It's believed that this doll is created with the intent of making Disgaze appear as a new mother, and therefore non-threatening, so as to allow the Pokemon to approach discreetly. If an adult finds a Disgaze starting to appear wherever they go, it means that they are the target of someone's envy, and if this goes unresolved, the Pokemon will attempt to steal the adult into the other world. If unable to escape, this person may spend the rest of their life as the object of a Disgaze's obsession. So maybe this Pokemon wouldn't necessarily be Sheila's ace, but she'd definitely have it on the team. Like I've mentioned previously, I don't have a head at all for competitive team setups or anything, so what I've chosen for the gym leaders might be absolutely useless, so don't pay much mind to that part. They're not really set in stone anyway. Third up is the leader who represents Ireland's literature, prose, poetry, and the art of storytelling by Shanachie, whose purpose was to pass on the old stories of heroes and events by word of mouth as a way to preserve history and tradition. These figures have always been extremely important throughout Irish history, and the bards who'd pass on these stories were often very highly regarded. And Ireland, of course, has produced many of the world's most esteemed authors and poets. For example, W.B. Yeats, Bram Stoker, C.S. Lewis, James Joyce, Seamus Heaney, just to name a few, and the man who this leader is mostly based on, Oscar Wilde. I've chosen the name Philius for this gym leader from the Irish word phili, meaning poet. He's dramatic and emotional, flamboyant in both presentation and speech, and I imagine his gym being part of a grand library, like the one in Trinity College in Dublin. Now, there are plenty of Pokemon concepts that I could use for his team, and I haven't got around to them yet, so he's still very up in the air that way. He would absolutely have Quillamant though, as like I said in the video where I introduced it, it's based on The Nightingale and the Rose story by Oscar Wilde. In the future, I'd like to design other Pokemon inspired by the stories of other Irish artists. Obviously Dracula and The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe being strong contenders. Maybe Philius would have an unknown as a joke Pokemon. Philius grants the player the Cadence badge, which I hope is fairly obvious what it's supposed to be. Cadence refers to the rhythm or inflection of the voice, which when deliberate and practiced can turn the performance of prose and poetry into spoken art. So last but not least, for now anyway, is the leader who's inspired by Ireland's culture around dance and music. This is Daunt, which is a surname in Ireland, although not super common, as well as a word that means to intimidate. I also chose it because of its closeness to dance, an old version of the word dance. I couldn't decide on an outfit for her, so she actually has two variations. The first is what could be called the traditional dress, but I think this type of outfit only really became a thing in like the 70s or the 80s, maybe a little earlier but not by much. They're slightly stiff and elaborately decorated dresses which are usually paired with curly wigs if the dancer doesn't already have curly hair. They're kind of more like a show dress now, whereas the dancing itself is associated with rigid arms and complex footwork. This style was popularised by the show Riverdance, which in the 90s brought Irish dancing very much into the Irish mainstream, where there hadn't really been much of an interest in it before. It also introduced a more free expression of the dance, where the arms were used more expressively and the outfits were looser. This is where the second outfit for Daunt comes in. It's based on one of the dresses worn by Jean Butler in the original Riverdance. I grew up watching the original show and listening to the music over and over, so I think of it really fondly, and I definitely wanted to incorporate it into the design of this gym leader. Gyms 1 to 7 are supposed to be in any order you choose. I want Gym 8 to be the only static one. So my thought was that if you decide to challenge Daunt in battles 1 to 4, she can be wearing the more rigid dress, but if it's fights 5 to 7, she can be wearing the looser dress, as an indication that she feels freer and more in her element. Irish music then is often characterised as vibrant, covering a broad range of genres, though I think most people immediately think of the traditional ballads or jigs, with fiddles and bowrons. Like any other country, Ireland's musical history is extensive, and I'm not a musician. Well, actually, I'm not a dancer either, so I can't really say much on it, other than if you've never seen the original Riverdance, please have a look. Please give it a go. The music still gives me goosebumps. Daunt grants you the Wild badge, where I wanted the design to look like someone dancing, as more of an expression of freedom and energy, while being completely absorbed in the music. Her team would obviously consist of Pokemon of a similar theme, but any of the ones that already exist either don't match her, or don't make sense in terms of how they'd even be in balladry. Maybe she can have an Exploud, I don't know. I'd love to give her an Lyrical, but obviously anyone else having a starter is a big faux pas, so maybe in rematches. One that she definitely has is this new Pokemon, based on the Merrow or a mermaid type creature. I didn't really know how to design something that hadn't been done before. Mermaids and sirens have been done to death and it's difficult to find a unique twist, so I don't really think I've achieved that, but I do think Faragal and its evolution still came out super cute. Faragal's name comes from the Irish for sea, faraga, and gal. I initially tried a design with the Pokemon style fish lips, but I don't know why I did that because I don't even like that design feature. So I kept her face a little gawpy looking with big spacey eyes, and I thought that was much cuter. So here we have Faragal, the sea maiden Pokemon, water and grass. Faragal congregate on rocks out at sea, combing their kelp-like hair with their tails and watching the goings-on of humans at shore. They're curious and friendly Pokemon, but not very bright. I actually really liked that tidbit of them not being bright, and it kind of morphed into this idea of like, you know the way that mermaids and sirens are supposed to be able to spellbind sailors with their otherworldly singing and lure them to their death? I thought it'd be funny if she was bad at it, but in a clueless way. So here we have Mirthrum, the sing-song Pokemon, water and grass. This Pokemon knots its hair to its tail as a makeshift harp, which it plucks tunelessly. They love to sing, though their voices are equally tone deaf. The noise drives away both people and Pokemon, but despite this, they're popular with trainers, as they're beloved for their exceptionally cheerful and helpful dispositions. Mirthrum are often used as a good example of the idea that you don't have to be good if you love what you do. The name is a combination of mirth, myrrh, thrum, and metrum. Okay, so even though I've introduced 4 characters and 2 Pokemon lines, I am still feeling like the video is lacking one more reveal. So since I teased it a while ago in my YouTube posts, I thought now would be a good time to show you the mythical of the region. Once I have more of the map, characters and Pokedex laid out, I'll make a video going into whatever plot I've come up with, so I won't go too much into it now. All I'll say is that this Pokemon is going to play a role in introducing the player to the other world, or the realm of the fairies. You'd meet it fairly early on in your journey, and it plays a kind of well-meaning trickster role, as in it doesn't mean to put you in danger, but its penchant for playing tricks will mean that sometimes it happens. Based of course on the national plant of Ireland, the shamrock, which is just a 3-leaf clover. The shamrock was heavily associated with St. Patrick as a symbol of the Holy Trinity, whereas nowadays I'm pretty sure it's mostly seen as one of luck. There used to be this idea that shamrock wouldn't grow anywhere outside of Ireland, which is obviously not true. But I do like the concept of translating that into that this Pokemon is really only found in Balladry and never ventures anywhere else. This is Shimmerogue, whose name is obviously a combination of shimmer and rogue, but it also comes from shamrogue, which is the Irish for shamrock. I like the idea of this adorable little prankster who shimmers as it flies around, giggling while it sends you accidentally falling off a cliff or something. It is also blue, because that is, or was, actually the national colour of Ireland, specifically St. Patrick's blue, which apparently in heraldry is just called azure blue. Obviously now green is the predominant colour associated with the country, hence being known as the Emerald Isle. Anyway, the shiny is green. So here she is, Shimmerogue, the luck Pokemon, grass and fairy type. This Pokemon will appear rarely and only to those who are lost or wandering, usually helping them find their way home. Not before they have their fun, however, as Shimmerogue will often lead people into perilous scenarios or through doorways to the other world, where the person may experience either blissful joy or inconceivable horror. Whichever outcome depends entirely on the type of luck Shimmerogue blesses you with, though more often than not, by human standards, it's usually bad. Only very few people through Balladrian history have reported a positive meeting with a Shimmerogue, and it's said that the rest of their lives following the encounter became almost dreamlike from the constant flow of good fortune they received. Maybe having one on your team increases the chances of finding Pokerus for those of you who want to go Wotato hunting. So, Shinae, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed these designs. Quick haphazard reminder that I have a Ko-fi if you'd like to support me as an independent artist. I'll leave a link in the description. All the best to you and happy 2026. See you in the next video. Bye!